Hey everyone, tonight we're going to take a little detour from the usual epic battles and grand emperors. We're going to step into the worn sandals of a Roman soldier, but not on the battlefield. Oh no. Tonight, you're about to experience something far more thrilling, terrifying, and utterly confusing. Going on leave. We're diving into the quirky, sometimes chaotic, lives of Roman soldiers when they finally got a break from legionary duty. And let's be honest, after an hour of whispering about ancient taverns and questionable hygiene, you probably won't survive this without a profound appreciation for your own comfy bed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to imagine our little sleepy community stretching across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've been out here, on the fringes of the empire, for what feels like an eternity. The rhythmic clang of drill practice, the dust of the marching ground, the rough camaraderie of the contubernum. It's all you've known for years. Every day blends into the next, marked by the rising and setting of the sun and the barked orders of your centurion. But then, a whisper starts, a rumor that floats through the camp like a sweet, illicit scent. Leave is coming. This burgeoning excitement and anticipation of well-earned leave was a crucial mainstream historical fact for Roman soldiers, a rare break from the brutal, relentless demands of military service. Imagine the shift in the camp's atmosphere. The usual grumbling takes on a lighter tone. The long hours feel a little less arduous. You find yourself polishing your lorica segmentata with a bit more zeal, or perhaps humming a tune as you sharpen your gladius. Every little chore becomes infused with the promise of freedom, of soft beds, of something other than hardtack and watered-down wine. You might even catch yourself grinning unexpectedly, a wide, almost childish smile that feels foreign on your sun-weathered face. Here's a quirky tidbit: while modern soldiers have clearly defined leave periods, Roman soldiers didn't have a standardized annual leave system like ours. Leave was often granted at the discretion of their commanding officer, typically for personal reasons, such as attending to family matters or handling property. This made it a highly coveted and often irregular privilege, not a given right. Imagine having to practically beg your grim-faced centurion for a few weeks off, knowing he could deny you just for the sheer fun of it. You might even find yourself trying to look extra diligent during inspection, hoping to curry favor. The anticipation isn't just for physical rest, it's for a mental reprieve, the constant vigilance, the ever-present threat of barbarian incursions, the rigid discipline. It wears on a man. Leave offers the chance to shed the heavy armor, both literal and figurative, and remember what it feels like to be an ordinary citizen, even if just for a short while. You dream of simple things: a hot bath that isn't communal and filled with questionable characters, a meal that doesn't involve dried beans, and perhaps, just perhaps, a quiet conversation with someone who doesn't speak in military jargon. Historians still argue whether the granting of leave to Roman soldiers was primarily a humanitarian concession to maintain morale, or if it was more a pragmatic necessity to allow soldiers to manage personal affairs that could not be handled from distant garrisons. Was it about welfare or efficiency? Regardless, you feel the profound weight of this impending freedom, an almost giddy sense of release building inside you, knowing that soon, very soon, the iron grip of the legion will loosen its hold, even if only for a fleeting moment. The distant bugle call, usually a signal for duty, now almost sounds like a fanfare for your imminent escape. The heady excitement of impending leave now gives way to the first practical hurdle. The journey home begins. You shoulder your civilian pack, lighter than your military kit but still substantial, and step outside the familiar confines of the castrum. This initiation of travel across the vast and often challenging Roman Empire is a crucial mainstream historical fact for any soldier on leave, a test of endurance and ingenuity before true relaxation could begin. Imagine the gate of the fort receding behind you, the sentry's nods, and the sudden, unsettling quiet. No more marching in lockstep, no more column formations. You're now just another traveler on the sprawling network of Roman roads. Or perhaps, if you're lucky, a passenger on a coastal vessel. The world that previously reduced to the immediate vicinity of your garrison now expands into a dizzying array of landscapes and faces. One moment, you're trudging through the muddy fields of Britannia. The next, you might be boarding a ship bound for the sun-drenched shores of Italia. Here's a quirky tidbit: while Roman roads were marvels of engineering, they weren't exactly smooth highways. You'd encounter rough stretches, sudden inclines, and deep ruts. And privacy. Forget about it. You'd likely be sharing inns with merchants, other soldiers, and all manner of travelers, sleeping in crowded dormitories where the snoring chorus could rival a legionary trumpet section. Imagine trying to get a decent night's sleep with a mule driver bellowing beside you and the distinct aroma of unwashed feet permeating the air. You might even find yourself instinctively checking your coin purse more often, just to be sure. Your mode of transport could vary. Most common was simply walking, covering impressive distances daily. Perhaps you'd occasionally hitch a ride on a cart or a military supply wagon, though these were slow and uncomfortable. If traveling long distances or across water, you might seek passage on a merchant ship, crammed alongside cargo and other passengers, susceptible to the whims of weather and the occasional pirate. This wasn't leisure cruising. It was a gritty, often arduous affair. Food on the journey would be basic and often cold dried bread, cheese, olives, and watered wine. You'd supplement this by buying provisions in roadside taverns or small villages, hoping for fair prices and uncontaminated water. The constant vigilance learned in the military wouldn't entirely dissipate. You'd still be wary of bandits on lonely stretches of road or unsavory characters in bustling ports. The sheer scale of the empire means your journey could take weeks, or even months, depending on your origin. A soldier from Syria serving on the Rhine frontier had a significantly longer trip home than one from Italy. This extended travel time ate into precious leave days and added another layer of exhaustion before reaching loved ones. Historians still argue whether the Roman road network was primarily built for rapid military deployment and logistics, or if its extensive development was equally driven by the needs of trade and civilian travel. Was it strategy or commerce that paved the way? Regardless, you feel the endless miles beneath your feet, the sway of the ship on the waves, or the jolting of a rough cart, knowing that every step, every day, brings you closer to the fleeting comfort of home, even as it consumes your precious time away from duty. The distant hum of the road is a monotonous, yet hopeful, companion. After what felt like an eternity of travel, you finally arrive. The familiar sights and sounds of your hometown wash over you, a blend of relief and a strange sense of disorientation. You're about to navigate the emotional complexities of counter-family reunions, awkward hugs. This return to civilian family life, after years immersed in the rigid military structure, is a crucial mainstream historical fact that often came with its own unique set of challenges and poignant moments for Roman soldiers on leave. Imagine walking down a familiar street, the scent of wood smoke and cooking food filling the air, so different from the dust and sweat of the barracks. You see your old house, perhaps a modest dwelling made of wood and plaster, or a small apartment in a bustling insula. Your heart pounds with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. How much have they changed? Have you changed too much? You might even pause for a moment, steeling yourself, remembering the last time you saw them. Here's a quirky tidbit: while parents and siblings might have been overjoyed, wives and children could find the reunion particularly awkward, especially if the soldier had been away for many years. Children might not even recognize their father, having grown up without him. Imagine a stern legionary, accustomed to barking orders, trying to coax a shy, unfamiliar child into an embrace, only to be met with wary eyes. You might even feel a pang of sadness at the thought of a child recoiling from your scarred, sun-darkened face. Your family, though overjoyed, might initially treat you with a mix of awe and unfamiliarity. You're no longer just their son or brother. You're a Roman soldier, a veteran of distant lands and fierce battles. The easy banter of civilian life might feel foreign, replaced by a more formal respect, or perhaps a cautious curiosity about your experiences. You might find yourself searching for the comfortable rhythm of old conversations, only to realize the rhythm has changed, and so have you. The immediate priorities would be food and rest. A real meal, prepared by loving hands, would be a welcome change from legionary rations. A soft bed, even a humble one, would feel like a luxury after years of sleeping on the ground or a hard cot. You'd share stories, probably edited for the ears of civilian family, focusing on the adventures and downplaying the brutality and tedium. You'd ask about local gossip, the health of relatives, the harvest, anything that connects you back to this quieter, less dangerous world. There might also be unspoken tensions. Money, or the lack thereof, could be a source of friction. The absence of a husband or son meant added burdens on the family, and the very nature of military service, with its long deployments and constant danger, created a distance that even love could not always bridge entirely. Historians still argue whether the long separations inherent in Roman military service fundamentally strained family bonds, or if the eventual return of a seasoned and potentially wealthier veteran actually strengthened the family unit in the long run. Was it a divisive force or a transformative one? Regardless, you feel the complicated emotions of this reunion, the joy tempered by an awareness of the years lost and the unspoken changes that have occurred in your absence. The warmth of a longed-for embrace feels both utterly real and strangely unfamiliar. The initial awkwardness of reunion slowly gives way to the palpable shift in how you're perceived within your community. You quickly realize your new veteran status, local respect, or this elevated social standing and deference accorded to a returning legionary was a crucial mainstream historical fact, reflecting the Roman Empire's profound reliance on its military and the prestige associated with long, honorable service. Imagine walking through the village market, no longer just young Marcus or Lucius, but Miles Romanus, a Roman soldier. People nod, some offer deferential greetings, and shopkeepers might even give you a slightly better price. There's a newfound respect in their eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of the hardships you've faced and the dangers you've survived on behalf of the empire. You're no longer just a local boy. You're a symbol of Roman power and order, a tangible link to the vast, unseen forces that govern their lives. You might find yourself unconsciously straightening your posture, a subtle reminder of the discipline still ingrained in your bones. Here's a quirky tidbit sometimes. Returning veterans were even granted special privileges or land allocations, especially after completing their full 20-25 years of service. This could range from a plot of land in a newly established colony to a cash bonus, offering a pathway to a more stable civilian life than they might have otherwise achieved. Imagine the whispers in the village. Did you hear old Gaius got a parcel of land up by the river? Must have been quite the fighter. You might even overhear a few envious murmurs, mixed with genuine admiration. This respect wasn't purely out of gratitude. It was also practical. A veteran was perceived as disciplined, capable, and often quite worldly. They had seen more of the empire than most civilians could ever dream of. They carried an aura of authority and experience, making them valuable members of any community, even if they occasionally told slightly exaggerated war stories in the tavern. They were living proof of the empire's reach and protection. You might be asked for advice on local disputes, or even for stories about distant lands and exotic peoples. Young boys might look at you with wide-eyed admiration, dreaming of their own future military service, while older men might seek your opinion on matters of strategy or defense. You've transitioned from being a cog in the military machine to a respected figure in your civilian world, a guardian of peace and order. Historians still argue whether the Roman state's policy of granting privileges to veterans was primarily a pragmatic tool for ensuring loyalty and attracting recruits, or if it also reflected a genuine societal reverence for military service as the highest form of civic duty. Was it calculated policy or cultural value? Regardless, you feel the subtle shift in social dynamics, the quiet deference that now accompanies your presence, a tangible reward for years of arduous service. The familiar surroundings now seem to view you with new eyes, recognizing the man you've become beyond the legion. With the newfound respect comes something even more tangible. Payday perks and spending spree. Kui. This access to accumulated funds, often held back as savings or paid out in larger installments, was a crucial mainstream historical fact that allowed Roman soldiers on leave to indulge in comforts and pleasures long denied, often leading to a veritable explosion of spending after years of frugality. Imagine the clink of coins in your hand, a satisfying weight that you haven't felt in years. While soldiers received regular pay stipendium, a portion of it was often withheld by the Legion as a compulsory saving, a kind of ancient forced retirement fund or bank account. On leave, you might receive a substantial lump sum or simply have access to your saved funds, turning you, for a brief period, into a relatively wealthy man in your local community. You might find yourself turning the coins over in your palm, a subtle smile playing on your lips, planning how to spend this newfound freedom. Here's a quirky tidbit: while some soldiers were responsible and saved for land or a business after discharge, many others were notorious for spending their accumulated pay incredibly quickly. Taverns, brothels, gambling dens, and lavish meals often saw the rapid dissipation of hard-earned cash. Imagine a soldier, after years of strict rations, ordering the most expensive spiced wine and an entire roasted boar for himself, perhaps even treating a few astonished civilian friends. A true medieval treat-yourself moment. You might even chuckle at the thought of ancient shopkeepers rubbing their hands together whenever a legionary arrived in town. Your spending spree wouldn't just be on indulgence. You'd likely invest in new civilian clothes, perhaps a finer toga or a new tunic, a welcome change from the rough military issue. You might buy gifts for your family or make small repairs to the family home. You'd also settle any outstanding debts or contribute to family expenses, trying to re-establish your civilian responsibilities. But the allure of fleeting pleasure, after years of brutal discipline, would be powerful. You might find yourself at the bustling market, examining exotic goods brought from distant provinces, spices from the East, fine pottery from Gaul, even a rare trinket from Britannia. The freedom to simply choose what to buy, rather than being issued it, feels profoundly liberating. The scent of roasted meats from a street vendor, the vibrant colors of dyes, the murmur of haggling voices. It's a sensory overload compared to the starkness of camp life. Historians still argue whether the Roman army's policy of withholding part of a soldier's pay was primarily a disciplinary measure to prevent desertion by keeping them financially dependent, or a pragmatic strategy to ensure veterans had some capital upon discharge. Was it about control or foresight? Regardless, you feel the exhilarating power of these coins in your hand, knowing that for a precious few weeks, you have the means to indulge, to provide, and to forget the harsh realities of military life. The weight of the coins is a tangible symbol of your fleeting freedom. With coins jingling in your newly acquired civilian tunic, your feet instinctively carry you towards the familiar streets and landmarks of your youth. You're now embarking on a nostalgic journey, visiting the old haunts. A crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the Roman soldier's desire to reconnect with the places and memories that defined his pre-military life, often finding them subtly or profoundly changed by the passage of time. Imagine the worn cobblestones beneath your sandals, the familiar smells of your neighborhood, perhaps a specific bakery or a local craftsman's shop. You might recognize the same old men sitting outside the tavern, seemingly unchanged by the years, or the same stray dogs wandering the alleys. There's a bittersweet familiarity, a sense of having stepped back in time, yet with an acute awareness that you are no longer quite the same person who left. You might find yourself stopping unexpectedly, just to take in a particular view, a hidden courtyard, or the shade of an old olive tree. letting memories wash over you. Here's a quirky tidbit: while some places might remain almost exactly as you remembered them, others, especially in a bustling Roman town, might have undergone significant changes. A new public bathhouse might have been built, a temple renovated, or a street expanded. Imagine returning to find your favorite old fishing spot now part of a grand new villa, or a familiar path rerouted for a new aqueduct. You might even find yourself grumbling. They just don't build things like they used to, echoing the complaints of grumpy veterans across the centuries. You seek out the places where you spent your childhood, the river where you swam, the fields where you played, the schoolhouse if you were fortunate enough to attend one, where you learned your letters. These physical spaces are anchors to your identity, reminders of who you were before the Legion shaped you. You touch a rough stone wall or run your hand over a familiar wooden fence, searching for a tangible connection to your past self. There's a subtle tension in this act of revisiting. The memories are vivid, but your present self, forged in the discipline and harshness of military life, feels slightly out of place in these gentle settings. The carefree boy who left is now a man who has seen war, faced death, and lived under the constant threat of violence. The innocence of these places contrasts sharply with the experience you carry. You might find yourself telling stories, perhaps embellished slightly, of your military adventures, trying to bridge the gap between your past and present. Or you might simply sit quietly, letting the familiar surroundings speak to you, offering a balm to a soul accustomed to constant vigilance and noise. Historians still argue whether the act of revisiting old haunts was primarily a psychological coping mechanism for soldiers, a way to ground themselves after traumatic experiences, or if it was more a social obligation, a means to demonstrate continuity with their civilian identity. Was it therapeutic or performative? Regardless, you feel the pull of these familiar places, a yearning for the comfort of the known, even as you acknowledge that time, relentless and unyielding, has subtly altered both the places and the person who experiences them. The echoes of your younger self mingle with the footsteps of the soldier you've become. With the familiar scents and sights of your old haunts settling in, your thoughts inevitably drift to a more personal connection, one that was often fraught with complexities for a Roman soldier. Love, lust, and legalities. You're now exploring the nuanced and often challenging romantic and marital lives of legionaries, a crucial mainstream historical fact shaped by military regulations and the realities of long-term service. Imagine yourself in a bustling Roman town, the air thick with chatter and the tantalizing smells of street food. Perhaps you spot a familiar face, a girl you knew before you joined, now a woman, or perhaps your eyes linger on a stranger, a local beauty. The desire for companionship, intimacy, and perhaps even a family is a powerful draw after years of exclusively male company and strict military discipline. You might feel a flush rise to your cheeks, a sensation both welcome and a little embarrassing after so long. Here's a quirky tidbit: until the reforms of Emperor Septimius Severus in the early 3rd century CE, Roman soldiers were technically forbidden from marrying while actively serving. No, this didn't stop them. Of course, many formed informal unions, known as contubernia, with local women near their garrisons. These relationships, while not legally recognized, were often stable and loving, producing families that lived just outside the military camps. Imagine the hushed conversations, the secret rendezvous, the quiet defiance of imperial decree. You might even chuckle at the thought of a grizzled centurion turning a blind eye to these unofficial arrangements, knowing full well what was going on. If you were a soldier from the provinces, you might have left a wife and children behind, making your return a true reunion. But for those stationed far from home for decades, new relationships were often formed. These informal marriages, though without the full legal protections of civilian marriage, often functioned identically, complete with shared households and children who might later struggle with their legitimacy. Upon returning home on leave, a soldier who had a legal marriage before enlistment could finally resume his conjugal life. But even for those legally married, years of separation could create distance. Communication was slow and unreliable. Letters could take months to arrive, if they arrived at all. Trust and fidelity were constantly tested by absence. The legal complexities also extended to children. While a Roman citizen father could not formally acknowledge children born during his service if the union was informal, upon discharge, he could sometimes legally marry his de facto wife and legitimize their children, ensuring they inherited his property and citizenship rights. This provided a powerful incentive for soldiers to serve out their full term in return. Historians still argue whether the prohibition on military marriage was primarily a pragmatic measure to reduce logistical burdens and prevent distractions for soldiers, or if it was also a way to maintain state control over soldiers' lives and loyalty. Was it about efficiency or absolute authority? Regardless, you feel the nuanced layers of longing and legality, of fleeting passion and enduring connection that shaped the romantic lives of Roman soldiers, a hidden emotional landscape beneath the stern facade of legionary duty. The whispers of love, both sanctioned and forbidden, seem to echo through the bustling streets. With the complexities of personal relationships swirling in your mind, your attention now turns to the more immediate and accessible forms of recreation available to a soldier on leave. Gaming and gambling dens. This widespread indulgence in popular Roman pastimes, from strategic board games to high-stakes dice throwing and gladiatorial spectacles, is a crucial mainstream historical fact that offered soldiers a thrilling escape from routine and a chance to test their luck or lose their pay. Imagine the smoky interior of a bustling tavern or a back alley gambling den. The air is thick with the scent of cheap wine, stale sweat, and nervous anticipation. The clatter of dice on a wooden board, the excited murmurs of onlookers, the occasional groan of a loser. It's a symphony of chance and fortune. You might feel a familiar itch in your palm, the urge to try your luck, to briefly forget the disciplined life of the legion and surrender to the whims of fate. Here's a quirky tidbit. One of the most popular Roman board games was Ludus Duodecim Scriptorum, game of 12 lines, or its simpler cousin, tabula, which bore a striking resemblance to modern backgammon. Gambling with dice tesserae was also incredibly common, despite often being illegal. Imagine seeing soldiers, even off duty, meticulously arranging their pieces or fiercely debating a throw of the dice, their strategic minds still at work, albeit on a very different kind of battlefield. You might even chuckle at the thought of a grizzled veteran complaining about a rigged game, just like a modern-day poker player. Beyond the small-stakes games in taverns, a Roman city offered grander spectacles. If you were fortunate enough to be on leave in a larger town, or even Rome itself, you might seek out the amphitheater for gladiatorial games, or beast hunts, venations. The roar of the crowd, the clash of steel, the visceral thrill of life or death combat. It was the ultimate distraction, a brutal form of entertainment that appealed to the soldiers' ingrained familiarity with violence and courage. You'd feel the energy of thousands of spectators, a collective gasp as a blow landed, a cheer for a skilled maneuver. Betting on these outcomes, whether on dice or the gladiators, was a common practice. Many a soldier's pay, so carefully saved, would vanish in a single night of bad luck. But the allure of a big win, of turning a few denarii into a small fortune, was a powerful siren song, especially for men accustomed to taking risks. These pastimes offered more than just entertainment. They provided an outlet for pent-up aggression, a sense of freedom from the rigid control of military life, and a chance for camaraderie outside the barracks. They were a necessary release, a way to blow off steam before returning to the grinding discipline of the legion. Historians still argue whether the Roman state tolerated gambling and other potentially unruly behaviors among soldiers on leave, primarily to allow for a necessary release of tension, or if it was simply too difficult to enforce strict moral codes uniformly across a vast empire. Was it calculated leniency or practical inability? Regardless, you feel the exhilarating pull of chance and spectacle, the brief, intoxicating freedom that comes from throwing caution and coins to the wind. A raw human desire for entertainment and the thrill of risk that resonated deeply with the Roman soldier's spirit. The rhythmic clatter of dice seems to call your name from the shadows. After the intoxicating thrill of the gambling dens, your thoughts turn to more sensory pleasures. A quintessential Roman indulgence. Baths, booze, and banquets. These communal rituals of cleansing, drinking, and feasting were a crucial mainstream historical fact, offering Roman soldiers on leave a profound sense of physical comfort, social connection, and sheer hedonistic release after the privations of military life. Imagine stepping into the steamy warmth of a Roman public bathhouse, thermae, or balnea. The air is thick with moisture and the murmur of voices. You move from the warm tepidarium to the hot caldarium, feeling the tension melt from your muscles, the grime of months of campaigning washing away. Then, perhaps, a daring plunge into the cold frigidarium, a shock to the system that leaves you tingling and refreshed. It's a symphony of relaxation, a far cry from the hurried splashes of camp life. You might even sigh contentedly, feeling the knots in your shoulders loosen with each rising wisp of steam. Here's a quirky tidbit. Roman baths weren't just for washing, they were social hubs. You'd find libraries, exercise grounds, shops, and even informal philosophers holding court. Imagine trying to relax in the caldarium, while two earnest men loudly debate the merits of stoicism just a few feet away. You might even overhear a juicy bit of gossip about the local senator, all while getting a vigorous rub-down from a bath attendant. You might even chuckle at the thought of ancient Romans multitasking their relaxation and their news consumption. Once clean and refreshed, the next indulgence would be booze. Wine, watered down for daily consumption, but potentially stronger in a tavern, was the drink of choice. Imagine the earthy taste of the local vintage, perhaps mixed with honey or spices. A welcome change from the sour, often thin military rations. Soldiers, starved for simple pleasures, would often drink heartily. The communal nature of taverns and banquets, fostering a sense of camaraderie that was both familiar and yet liberatingly informal compared to camp life. And finally, the masher banquets, or simple, hearty meals. You'd move from the bathhouse to a private dining room if wealthy, or a bustling capona inn or popana eatery. Imagine platters piled high with roasted meats, fresh bread, olives, cheeses, and fruits. A feast for the senses after years of gruel and hardtack. The aroma of spices, the warmth of freshly baked bread, the clinking of cups. It's a symphony of satiety and contentment. These experiences weren't just about physical pleasure. They were vital for social reintegration, sharing food and drink, engaging in relaxed conversation, and participating in the communal rituals of bathing helped a soldier shed his military skin and reconnect with civilian rhythms. They were essential rites of passage, marking the temporary return to normalcy. Historians still argue whether the Roman emphasis on public baths and communal dining was primarily a practical matter of urban sanitation and feeding large populations, or if it also served as a deliberate tool for social cohesion and the inculcation of Roman identity. Was it hygiene or social engineering? Regardless, you feel the profound pleasure of these simple, yet luxurious moments. A true respite for a body and mind accustomed to constant hardship. The warm water, the sweet wine, and the taste of real food are a profound balm to your weary soul. With your body sated by the pleasures of the bath and banquet, a different kind of obligation nudges at your conscience. You are now attending to religious duties, private vows. This fulfillment of personal religious obligations and the making of offerings was a crucial mainstream historical fact for Roman soldiers on leave, allowing them to reconnect with the divine protection they sought, both for themselves and their loved ones. After the inherent dangers of military life, imagine stepping into the quiet solemnity of a local temple or a small family shrine. The air is thick with the scent of incense, and perhaps the faint aroma of sacrificial offerings. You might see flickering oil lamps, statues of household gods, lairs, and penates, or busts of ancestors. This isn't the grand imperial cult of the Legion, but a more personal, intimate connection to the divine, a spiritual homecoming. You might find yourself breathing a sigh of relief in the peaceful quiet, a stark contrast to the clamor of the camp. Here's a quirky tidbit, soldiers. Constantly facing death, often made vows to deities for safe passage or victory in battle, promising specific offerings if they returned alive. Imagine a grizzled legionary, fresh from a skirmish in Germania, carefully placing a small, rough-hewn wooden statuette of Mars, god of war, on an altar, fulfilling a desperate promise made on a distant battlefield. You might even chuckle at the thought of a soldier haggling with a god. Just get me through this one, Jupiter, and I'll sacrifice 3 chickens. Promise. Your religious duties might involve offering libations of wine, burning incense, or sacrificing a small animal if you could afford it to a local deity or a specific god associated with your family or region. You'd pray for the continued health and prosperity of your family, for the safety of your comrades still at the front, and perhaps subtly, for a peaceful and prosperous future for yourself after your military service ends. Beyond the formal temples, many Roman homes had small household shrines, the lararium, where offerings were made daily to the lares guardian deities of the household and penates gods of the pantry. This private devotion was a fundamental part of daily life, reinforcing the spiritual protection of the family unit. You might join your mother or wife in offering a pinch of salt or a few flowers to these household gods, a simple act that reconnects you to the ancient traditions of your ancestors. These religious acts serve both a spiritual and a psychological purpose. They offered a sense of control in an unpredictable world, a way to seek divine favor and express gratitude. For a soldier who had witnessed the random brutality of war, reaffirming his connection to the gods was a crucial way to make sense of his experiences and find comfort. Historians still argue whether the widespread practice of votive offerings and personal vows among Roman soldiers was primarily a genuine expression of polytheistic belief, or if it was more a pragmatic attempt to secure good fortune and alleviate the existential anxieties of constant danger. Was it sincere piety or a form of spiritual insurance? Regardless, you feel the weight of these ancient rituals, the quiet solemnity of your prayers, and the humble act of your offering, finding a momentary peace in the sacred spaces that connect you to the divine and to the comforting traditions of your family. The gentle scent of incense seems to bring a fleeting serenity. With your religious duties attended to, you now step back into the rhythm of your civilian hometown, observing civic life, absent mind, this re-engagement with local politics, bustling markets, and daily civilian routines, while technically on leave, often came with a sense of detachment for a Roman soldier, his mind still partially tethered to the distant demands and discipline of the legion. Imagine watching a group of local town councilors debating a new tax on olives, or listening to the spirited arguments in the forum over a minor civic improvement. The concerns seem so small, so mundane, compared to the life or death decisions and grand strategies you've witnessed on the frontier. The passionate rhetoric about potholes or property disputes feels trivial after years of silence on the march or the roar of battle. You might even find yourself unconsciously scanning the crowd, a military habit that feels out of place here. Here's a quirky tidbit: while civilians might eagerly seek news from distant provinces from a returning soldier, they often had little interest in the minutiae of military life, preferring local gossip or news about gladiatorial games. Imagine trying to explain the intricacies of building a marching camp or the precise formation for a testudo, only to have your civilian audience politely stifle yawns and ask if you saw any exotic beasts. You might even feel a slight frustration, a sense of your experiences being incomprehensible to those who haven't lived them. You observe the rhythm of civilian life: merchants opening their stalls, artisans plying their trades, children playing in the streets. It's a softer, slower pace than the regimented clang of the castrum. You appreciate the quiet, the lack of constant alarms, but there's a subtle disconnect. Your body might be home, but part of your mind, the part trained for vigilance and order, remains on duty. You might find yourself judging the efficiency of a local delivery system or mentally assessing the defensive capabilities of the town walls, almost instinctively. Participating in local elections or attending a public assembly might feel obligatory rather than engaging. The civilian arguments seem less consequential, their passions less urgent than the grim realities of imperial defense. You might offer a quiet opinion if asked, drawing on your broader experiences, but mostly you observe a silent sentinel in a world that moves to a different beat. This detachment isn't a sign of disdain, but a natural consequence of years spent in a highly specialized, insulated environment. The Legion becomes your primary community, its values, your guiding principles. Returning to a civilian world, however beloved, requires a mental readjustment, a shedding of the military mindset that isn't easily accomplished in a few weeks. Historians still argue whether this detachment from civilian life, upon returning from military service, was primarily a result of the psychological impact of combat and prolonged exposure to military culture, or if it was also influenced by the practicalities of a soldier's separation from civilian professions and social networks. Was it trauma, or simply social recalibration? Regardless, you feel the subtle pull between your civilian past and your military present, observing the quiet rhythm of civic life with a mind that, even on leave, is still partially marching to a distant drum. The murmur of civilian voices seems to fade in and out, like a half-remembered dream, as the civilian world gently hums around you. A sensory pleasure, deeply missed and profoundly comforting, now takes center stage. The comforts of home cooking. You savor the simple, yet profound joy of meals prepared by your family, a crucial mainstream historical fact that offered a stark, delicious contrast to the monotonous, often unappetizing rations of legionary life, providing both physical nourishment and emotional warmth. Imagine the rich aromas wafting from your family's cooking fire, perhaps freshly baked bread, savory stews simmering with herbs, or roasted meat. The smells alone are a revelation after years of hardtack, salted pork, and watery pasca, a soldier's drink of vinegar, water, and herbs. You sit at a wooden table, perhaps worn smooth by generations of hands, surrounded by familiar faces. This isn't just sustenance, it's an act of love, a reconnection through shared sustenance. You might even find yourself closing your eyes for a moment, just to fully inhale the comforting sense, a profound sense of peace settling over you. Here's a quirky tidbit: while soldiers' diets were utilitarian, often consisting of grain, beans, dried meat, and cheese, civilian diets, even for common folk, offered more variety and fresh ingredients, especially depending on the season. Imagine the sheer delight of biting into a ripe, sweet fig or a freshly picked olive, flavors you haven't tasted in years, having subsisted on dried and preserved goods. You might even discover a new appreciation for the simple crunch of a fresh vegetable, a luxury previously overlooked. The food tastes different. It's prepared with care, with familiar spices and family recipes that evoke powerful memories. Your mother or wife might fuss over you, urging you to eat more, pleased to see you regaining some of the flesh lost during arduous campaigns. The conversation around the table flows easily, a comfortable rhythm of local gossip and familial affection, so different from the terse, functional chatter of the mess tent. Each meal is a reminder of what you've been fighting for: the quiet comforts of home, the stability of civilian life, the simple pleasures that make hardship bearable. You might find yourself lingering over a particular dish, savoring every mouthful, knowing that soon you'll return to the monotonous fare of the barracks. The contrast isn't just about taste, it's about the emotional nourishment. Meals in the Legion were often quick, communal affairs, focused on efficiency. Here, they are slow, relaxed, and intimate, a time for bonding and shared humanity. The warmth of the food spreads through your body, banishing the lingering chill of distant garrisons. Historians still argue whether the quality of Roman civilian diet, particularly for the lower classes, was genuinely superior to military rations, or if the perception of home cooking was more about psychological comfort and nostalgia. Was it truly healthier or just emotionally satisfying regardless? You feel the profound joy and revitalization that comes from these simple, heartfelt meals, a tangible expression of family love, and a deeply missed comfort that nourishes not just your body, but your very soul. The lingering taste of home is a sweet, temporary pleasure. As the comforting warmth of home cooking settles in your stomach, your ears accustomed to the dull roar of the barracks, now pick up the more nuanced rhythms of civilian life. Local news, imperial whispers. Cuddy, you find yourself catching up on the mundane details of village gossip, interspersed with broader, often unsettling, rumors and official pronouncements from the far-off heart of the Roman Empire. This absorption of both the trivial and the significant is a crucial mainstream historical fact, connecting the soldier on leave to the wider world he protects. Imagine sitting by the hearth, perhaps sipping a cup of warmed wine, as your mother recounts the latest squabble between two neighbors over a shared well, or how the local baker finally married off his eldest daughter. These small, human dramas feel both utterly inconsequential and profoundly grounding, a stark contrast to the grand-scale conflicts you've just left. You might even find yourself nodding, offering a detached or a quiet chuckle, a world away from tactical maneuvers and supply lines. Here's a quirky tidbit while local news might dominate. A returning soldier was often a prime source for information about imperial affairs. Civilians with limited access to official dispatches or distant newspapers, acta diurna, would eagerly pump you for details about rebellions, new emperors, or the movements of legions. Imagine being surrounded by curious villagers, peppering you with questions about battles you barely remember, or asking if the new emperor really has a talking horse. You might even find yourself slightly exaggerating a detail or two, just to keep them entertained. Beyond the local chatter, the imperial whispers would drift in news of new taxation decrees, reports of barbarian threats along a different frontier, or updates on the latest imperial building projects in Rome. These pieces of information, often vague and unreliable, would remind you of the vast, complex machinery of the empire that you are a part of, and the constant struggles it faced beyond your immediate garrison. You might feel a flicker of the old military vigilance, a renewed sense of the dangers that still lurk beyond the Pax Romana. You'd also contribute to the flow of information yourself. You'd share carefully curated stories from your time in service, exotic locales, strange customs of conquered peoples, perhaps a humorous anecdote about a particularly grumpy centurion. You'd omit the brutal realities, the tedium, and the true horrors of battle, presenting a sanitized, perhaps even romanticized version of military life. This exchange of information helps you reacclimatize. The local news grounds you in your immediate community, reminding you of the people and places you defend. The imperial whispers keep you connected to the larger purpose of your service, even as you enjoy your temporary respite. It's a bridge between your two lives, the civilian and the military, a constant negotiation of identity. Historians still argue whether the flow of information in the Roman Empire was primarily top-down, controlled by the state for propaganda purposes, or if informal networks of soldiers, merchants, and travelers provided a more robust and unofficial channel for news and gossip. Was it censorship or grassroots communication that truly informed the populace regardless? You feel the subtle currents of information washing over you, a reminder that even on leave, you are still a part of a larger, interconnected world, both small and vast, a constant recipient and occasional dispenser of its myriad tales. The rustle of gossip and the faint echo of imperial decrees mingle in the quiet air of your temporary civilian existence. With your ears attuned to the local and imperial currents, your thoughts turn to a more tangible expression of your journey: gifts for the folks. This practice of Roman soldiers bringing back items from distant lands for their families was a crucial mainstream historical fact, serving not only as a token of affection in a demonstration of worldly experience, but also sometimes as a subtle display of wealth and adventure. Imagine unwrapping a small package, perhaps a piece of woven cloth with an unfamiliar pattern from Gaul, or a delicate pottery vessel from North Africa, or even a handful of exotic dried fruits from the East. These weren't just everyday items, they were treasures, tangible proof of your travels to the far-flung corners of the vast Roman Empire. Your family's eyes widened with a mixture of surprise and delight, marveling at objects they might never otherwise see. You might even feel a quiet satisfaction, seeing their faces light up, a welcome change from the stern expressions of your comrades. Here's a quirky tidbit while some gifts were practical, like specialized tools or durable fabrics. Many were more decorative or exotic, chosen for their novelty rather than their utility. Imagine presenting your mother with a beautifully carved bone comb from Britannia, or your sister with a small, oddly shaped amulet from the Germanic frontier. Both perhaps considered curiosities rather than everyday necessities. You might even chuckle at the thought of explaining to your bewildered aunt that the strange, dried plant you brought back from Egypt is actually a rare spice, not just a bit of old foliage. The act of giving gifts was deeply significant. It was a tangible way to express affection and to reestablish bonds that had been stretched by years of separation. It showed your family that you thought of them, even in distant lands, and that you valued your connection. For parents, a gift from a son on campaign was a visible sign of his survival and prosperity. These gifts also offered a glimpse into the diverse cultures and economies of the empire. They represented the spoils of peace, the result of trade and conquest that allowed such exotic goods to travel across vast distances. For your family, living a relatively static life, these items were windows to a wider world, sparking imagination and perhaps a longing for adventures of their own. You'd present the gifts with a quiet pride, perhaps recounting a brief, sanitized story about how you acquired them, conveniently omitting any dangerous encounters or arduous negotiations. The joy on their faces, the careful handling of these unfamiliar objects is its own reward. A moment of pure, uncomplicated happiness that cuts through the lingering shadows of military life. Historians still argue whether the exchange of such gifts between soldiers and their families primarily served to reinforce familial bonds and provide material support, or if it was also a subtle form of cultural exchange, introducing new tastes and ideas from the provinces into civilian Roman life. Was it affection or acculturation? Regardless, you feel the warmth of gratitude radiating from your loved ones, a tangible reminder of the deep connections that bind you, even across the vast distances you have traveled. The memory of their smiles, illuminated by the exotic goods you brought, will be a comforting thought on your journey back to the Legion. With the warmth of your family's gratitude for your gifts still lingering, you begin to notice something peculiar. Despite being on leave, the ingrained discipline of military life is hard to shake. You find your training's lingering habits intruding on civilian life, a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the deep psychological and behavioral impact of years of rigorous Roman military training, making a seamless return to civilian routines a surprising challenge. Imagine waking before dawn. Even though you have no guard duty, your eyes snap open, accustomed to the bugle call or the murmur of the camp stirring. You might find yourself instinctively making your bedroll perfectly or arranging your civilian clothes with military precision. Perhaps you notice a faint ache in your shoulders from where your lorica usually sits, even though you're wearing nothing heavier than a wool tunic. It's like your body remembers the routine, even when your mind is trying to forget it. You might even chuckle at your own involuntary discipline, a testament to years of relentless conditioning. Here's a quirky tidbit: Roman soldiers were drilled relentlessly, not just in combat, but in marching, camp building, and even personal hygiene. This created a profound sense of order and routine. Imagine walking down a civilian street and unconsciously falling into a marching cadence. Your stride too long, too regular, causing bewildered glances from local peasants. You might even find yourself correcting a civilian's posture or tidying a messy stack of goods at the market, much to their astonishment. You might find yourself scanning the horizon for potential threats, Even in the peaceful fields of your homeland, a sudden noise might make you instinctively reach for a weapon that isn't there. You're accustomed to constant vigilance, a readiness for danger that is difficult to switch off. The quiet rhythm of civilian life, while welcome, might also feel strangely unsettling, a lack of the familiar tension that has become your normal. Even your speech might carry traces of military jargon, Latin phrases, rough commands, or a certain clipped tone that civilian ears might find odd. You're used to direct communication, to orders given and obeyed without question, which can make casual conversations with civilians feel unnecessarily verbose or indirect. You might find yourself inadvertently barking a command at a slow-moving donkey, much to your own amusement. The constant physical conditioning also manifests. You might find yourself wanting to walk everywhere, even short distances, preferring the exertion to leisurely strolls. Your hands, accustomed to handling weapons and tools, might feel restless without a specific task. The very structure of your day feels off-kilter without the rigid schedule of drills, inspections, and duties. Historians still argue whether these lingering military habits made it genuinely difficult for Roman veterans to reintegrate into civilian society, or if they were seen as positive attributes, showcasing discipline and reliability to potential employers or family members. Was it a burden or a boon? Regardless, you feel the subtle yet persistent intrusion of your training on your leave, a constant reminder that the Legion has fundamentally reshaped you, making a full return to your former civilian self a more complex task than simply shedding your armor. The phantom weight of your gladius at your hip is a constant, subtle presence. Despite the lingering habits of military life, your return home offers the invaluable opportunity to reconnect with faces from your past. You eagerly seek out old friends, new stories. A crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the Roman soldiers' desire to rekindle civilian friendships, sharing tales of their adventures and bridging the gap created by years of separation and profoundly different experiences. Imagine sitting in a familiar tavern, or perhaps in the shade of a local olive grove, with childhood friends you haven't seen in years. Their faces are older, perhaps etched with the lines of civilian life, farming, trade, family worries. You recognize the familiar twinkle in their eyes, the comfort of shared history. The initial awkwardness of reunion gives way to a rush of questions, eager anticipation for your tales from distant lands. You might feel a profound sense of warmth, a connection to a part of yourself that seemed dormant during your military service. Here's a quirky tidbit: while your friends would be fascinated by your tales of battles in foreign lands, they'd also be eager to share their own news stories, local gossip, love affairs, new businesses, or the antics of unruly children. Imagine trying to describe a fierce barbarian charge, only to be interrupted by your friend asking if you heard about old man Tiberius's runaway pig. You might even chuckle at the disparity, realizing the vast difference in your daily concerns. You would recount tales of your adventures, carefully curating them for civilian ears. The arduous marches become epic journeys, the skirmishes transform into heroic feats, and the grim realities of camp life are replaced by humorous anecdotes about eccentric centurions or strange provincial customs. You'd paint vivid pictures of the empire's vastness, its diverse peoples, and the marvels of Roman engineering you'd witnessed. This storytelling is a vital part of your reintegration, a way to translate your experiences into a language your friends can understand. In turn, you'd absorb their stories, catching up on years of missed life, the rhythm of their daily routines, the small joys and sorrows of their civilian existence, slowly bring you back into the fold of your community. You learn about marriages, births, deaths, and the changing landscape of your hometown. It's a reciprocal exchange, each side trying to bridge the experiential chasm that has grown between you. These reconnections are essential for your well-being. The camaraderie of the Legion is powerful, but it's a specific kind of bond, forged in shared hardship and discipline. Civilian friendships offer a different kind of support, rooted in affection, shared history, and the gentle give and take of ordinary life. They remind you of the person you were and the person you might become again. Historians still argue whether the stories Roman soldiers told upon returning from leave primarily served to entertain and inform their civilian friends, or if they also functioned as a form of self-therapy, allowing the soldiers to process and normalize their traumatic experiences through narrative. Was it for their audience or for themselves regardless? You feel the profound satisfaction of these reconnections, the warmth of laughter, and the comfort of shared memories. Understanding that even after years away, true friendship endures, bridging the vast distances of the Roman world. The murmur of old friends sharing new stories is a soothing balm to your weary soul. With old friendships rekindled, your quest for personal solace might extend beyond familiar faces to the realm of the spiritual. You might find yourself seeking spiritual solace, a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights how Roman soldiers, accustomed to a pantheon of gods and the ever-present threat of death, often engaged with local shrines, mystery cults, or even introduced new deities acquired from their travels, bringing a piece of the diverse empire's spirituality back home. Imagine the quiet reverence of a local shrine, perhaps a small, humble affair dedicated to a nymph or a regional hero. Or perhaps you're drawn to the whispers surrounding a more exotic cult, one you might have encountered in the East, like the worship of Mithras or Isis. After years facing death on the battlefield, the desire for divine protection and a sense of cosmic order would be profound. You might feel a subtle tremor of awe, a yearning for answers to life's biggest questions, or simply a deep need for peace. Here's a quirky tidbit. Roman soldiers were incredibly open to adopting new gods and religious practices encountered in the provinces. They often built altars to local deities, incorporating them into their personal pantheon. Imagine a grizzled veteran who routinely sacrificed to Jupiter, now secretly making offerings to a Syrian goddess he encountered on campaign, believing she might offer unique protection. You might even chuckle at the thought of a soldier's personal altar becoming a strange, multicultural display of divine figures. Your spiritual quest might involve offering a small votive tablet, a prayer, or a simple sacrifice at a local temple. You might seek blessings for your family, for safe return to duty, or for a prosperous life after discharge. These personal acts of piety stood in contrast to the formal, often impersonal, military cults of the legions, offering a more intimate connection to the divine. For some, the appeal of mystery cults was strong. These secretive religions, often originating in the East, promised personal salvation, a deeper understanding of the universe, and a sense of community beyond the mundane world. Initiating into such a cult while on leave might offer a soldier a profound spiritual experience, a sense of belonging and purpose that transcended the brutality of military life. The hushed whispers of initiation rites, the shared secrets, would create a powerful bond. Bringing new deities or religious customs back home was also a common phenomenon, subtly enriching the religious landscape of Roman society. Soldiers, as travelers and conquerors, acted as conduits for cultural exchange. Even in matters of faith, historians still argue whether the Roman soldiers' openness to new cults and deities was primarily a pragmatic response to the dangers of their profession, seeking any available protection, or if it reflected a genuine spiritual curiosity and a fluid approach to polytheistic belief. Was it desperation or spiritual enlightenment? Regardless, you feel the quiet pull of spiritual longing, finding a moment of solace in the ancient practices that connect you to forces beyond mortal comprehension, a deeper sense of peace amidst the enduring chaos of life. The scent of ancient incense seems to linger, a gentle reminder of the sacred. With your spiritual compass recalibrated, your attention now shifts to the more mundane, yet utterly essential, preparations for your return to duty. You are now shopping for supplies, a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the soldier's need to acquire essential items, both personal and sometimes military related, for the journey back and for the demanding life within the legion. This wasn't about leisure, it was about practical necessity. Imagine yourself navigating the bustling market. No longer a carefree civilian, Your mind is already transitioning back to the pragmatic needs of military life. You seek out durable, high-quality items, tough leather for repairing your boots or equipment, perhaps a new wool tunic to guard against the cold of a distant frontier, or a fresh supply of dried rations for the journey. Every purchase is measured against its utility, its weight, and its durability on the march. You might feel a familiar tension in your shoulders, a subtle bracing for the heavy pack you'll soon be carrying again. Here's a quirky tidbit: while the Legion supplied basic equipment, soldiers often supplemented their gear with privately purchased items, especially those that offered greater comfort or personal utility. Imagine haggling with a merchant over the price of a particularly sturdy pair of socks, knowing that cold feet on a long march can be utterly miserable. You might even find yourself debating the merits of a new, slightly fancier cloak, weighing its warmth against the inevitable mud and where it will endure. You might even chuckle at your own sudden shift from pleasure seeker to pragmatic quartermaster. Your shopping list might include writing tablets and styluses for letters, small personal grooming items, or even a lucky charm to take back to the front. You might also be tasked by your comrades still in camp to pick up specific items they requested, acting as a temporary courier for their desires. This responsibility underscores the strong bonds within the contubernium and the reliance on those on leave to bridge the gap with the civilian world. The choice of goods also reflects the realities of soldiering. You wouldn't buy anything too fragile or cumbersome. Every item had to earn its place in your pack, enduring long marches, rough handling, and the unpredictable conditions of military life. You'd inspect quality carefully, knowing that shoddy craftsmanship could mean discomfort, or worse, failure in the field. As you move through the market, the sights and sounds that once seemed so liberating now begin to remind you of the inevitable return to discipline. The vibrant chatter, the leisurely pace of civilians. They are fleeting luxuries. Your purchases are physical manifestations of your coming return. Each item a small piece of the civilian world you will carry back into the heart of the Legion. Historians still argue whether the private provisioning of Roman soldiers, allowing them to purchase supplementary equipment, primarily reflected a lack of comprehensive state supply systems, or if it was a deliberate policy to foster individual responsibility and initiative. Was it state deficiency or soldier agency? Regardless, you feel the shift in your mindset, from carefree visitor to practical planner, as you gather the necessities for your journey back, each item a tangible step towards the resumption of your military duties. The weight of your purchases is a subtle reminder of the discipline that awaits. With your supplies gathered and the time for your return drawing near, a peculiar and unexpected feeling begins to surface. You find yourself experiencing a surprising homesickness for the camp. This counterintuitive yearning for the structured, often harsh, routine of military life is a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the profound psychological impact of long-term service, where the Legion, despite its hardships, became a soldier's primary home and source of identity. Imagine sitting in your comfortable civilian home, perhaps enjoying a quiet evening meal with your family, yet a subtle restlessness gnaws at you. You miss the familiar clang of armor, the predictable rhythm of the bugle calls, the rough jokes shared in the contubernium. The silence of civilian life, once a welcome respite, now feels strangely empty. You might even catch yourself unconsciously tapping out a marching beat with your fingers, a subconscious yearning for the familiar order. Here's a quirky tidbit: this homesickness for the camp was a recognized phenomenon, sometimes leading to veterans struggling with civilian life after discharge. The rigid structure, clear hierarchy, and constant camaraderie of the Legion, while demanding, also provided a strong sense of purpose and belonging that civilian life often lacked. Imagine a soldier, accustomed to having every meal and every minute dictated, feeling utterly lost when faced with the mundane choices of civilian freedom. You might even chuckle at the thought of a grizzled legionary complaining to his bewildered family, "But when do we drill? I miss the drills." Your identity, where forged in years of shared hardship and discipline, is deeply intertwined with the Legion. Your comrades are your brothers, your unit, your family. The civilian world, however beloved, lacks that intense bond. that shared understanding of unimaginable experiences. You find yourself thinking of a specific comrade, wondering if he's safe or if he's thinking of you. The thought of rejoining them, despite the impending return to duty, brings a strange sense of comfort and belonging. The discipline, which once felt restrictive, now offers a peculiar kind of freedom. The freedom from constant decision-making, from civilian squabbles, from the ambiguities of life outside the clear-cut rules of the military. You understand your place in the Legion, your purpose. Civilian life, by comparison, can feel messy, uncertain, and even a little boring. This yearning isn't about glorifying war or hardship. It's about the profound human need for belonging, for a clear role, and for the security that comes from being part of a well-oiled machine. The Legion, for all its brutality, provided that your brief taste of civilian freedom, while sweet, has also highlighted the deep bond you formed with your military life. Historians still argue whether this feeling of homesickness for the camp was primarily a psychological adaptation to prolonged institutionalization, or if it genuinely reflected a soldier's preference for the camaraderie and clear purpose of military life over the complexities of civilian society. Was it Stockholm Syndrome or true belonging? Regardless, you feel the subtle, yet undeniable, pull of the Legion, a strange longing for the familiar hardships and predictable rhythms that have shaped your very being. The distant image of the castrum now feels less like a prison and more like a returning haven. Despite the growing pull of the Legion, you find yourself reluctantly drawn into the petty squabbles of civilian life. You're now dealing with civilian disputes, a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights how a Roman soldier on leave, accustomed to military justice and clear hierarchies, might find himself navigating minor local conflicts with a mix of bemusement, exasperation, and perhaps a touch of his ingrained soldier's perspective. Imagine two neighbors arguing heatedly over a boundary line, or a merchant accusing another of shortchanging him on a transaction. Their voices are loud, their gestures dramatic, and the issue, to your battle-hardened mind, seems utterly trivial. A man who has seen men die over fractions of an inch of ground, are now asked to weigh in on a dispute over a misplaced chicken. You might feel an internal sigh escape, a longing for the simple, decisive justice of a centurion's decree. Here's a quirky tidbit while you might be expected to offer advice due to your perceived authority and worldly experience. You'd likely try to avoid getting directly involved in complex legal wrangling. Roman law, especially local customary law, could be convoluted, and the last thing a soldier on leave wanted was to get entangled in a civilian lawsuit. Imagine trying to explain the finer points of frontier defense strategy to your family, only to be interrupted by a plea to settle who owns a particularly stubborn goat. You might even chuckle at the absurdity of exchanging a shield wall formation for a neighborly quarrel. Your military training, however, might subtly influence your approach. You'd be inclined to seek clear facts, direct solutions, and perhaps a swift resolution. The patience required for civilian negotiation, for endless back-and-forth arguments, might test your legionary discipline. You might offer blunt advice or suggest a compromise that seems utterly obvious to you, but which the embroiled civilians find surprisingly difficult to grasp. These disputes, however minor, served as a stark reminder of the differences between military and civilian life. In the Legion, disagreements were settled quickly, often by rank and force. In the civilian world, mediation, social pressure, and sometimes formal legal processes were the tools. It's a contrast between imposed order and organic, often messy, community dynamics. You might be asked to mediate because of your perceived impartiality, or simply because your presence as a soldier carries an unspoken authority. Your word might carry more weight, even if you offer no actual legal power. It's a subtle way in which your military identity bleeds into your civilian persona, even when you're trying to relax. Historians still argue whether a Roman soldier's involvement in civilian disputes was primarily seen as a civic duty and a display of their wisdom, or if it was sometimes resented by local authorities who preferred to maintain their own jurisdiction. Was it helpful mediation or unwelcome interference? Regardless, you feel the familiar tension of conflict, albeit on a much smaller scale. Finding yourself applying a soldier's perspective to the surprisingly complex world of local squabbles. A subtle reminder that, even on leave, the instincts of a legionary are never truly dormant. The petty bickering of the civilians sounds almost like distant bugle calls, signaling a different kind of skirmish. With the echoes of civilian squabbles still faintly in your ears, a more personal and enduring obligation emerges. You now turn your thoughts to Letters from the Front, a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the soldier's responsibility in longing to communicate with comrades still on duty, sharing news, offering encouragement, and maintaining the vital bonds of military camaraderie across vast distances. Imagine sitting at a small, rough wooden table in your family home, perhaps by the flickering light of an oil lamp. You unroll a piece of papyrus or a waxed wooden tablet, a rare and precious commodity. You dip your stylus into ink or carve into wax and carefully begin to form letters, painstakingly translating the unspoken thoughts into written words. You're not writing to your family, you're writing to your brothers in arms, those still enduring the daily grind and dangers of the frontier. You might even find yourself unconsciously shifting into the terse, direct language of the Legion, a subtle nod to the shared understanding between soldiers. Here's a quirky tidbit: sending and receiving letters in the Roman Empire was incredibly slow and unreliable. It could take weeks, even months, for a message to travel across provinces, relying on military couriers, merchants, or other traveling individuals. Imagine trying to explain your enjoyable leave to a comrade who received your letter 3 months later, perhaps after facing a barbarian raid. You might even chuckle at the thought of a soldier getting excited about a letter, only to discover it's 3 seasons out of date, asking if he's still alive. Your letters would be filled with news from home, the health of mutual friends, any local gossip, perhaps a mention of the weather or the harvest. More importantly, you'd share sanitized details of your leave: the good food, the warm baths, the brief taste of freedom, perhaps offering a much-needed mental escape for those still on duty. You'd inquire about their well-being, about the latest drills, about any news from the broader campaign. These letters were a vital lifeline. They maintained morale, reassured comrades of your safety, and reinforced the bonds of loyalty and shared experience that transcended physical distance. For soldiers stationed on lonely frontiers, a letter from a comrade on leave was a tangible connection to the world beyond the castrum, a reminder of the life that awaited them. The act of writing itself would be a quiet, reflective moment. You'd think of specific faces, specific shared hardships, specific jokes that only a fellow legionary would understand. It's a moment of profound empathy, a recognition of the continuing struggle that your friends endure while you enjoy your temporary respite. You choose your words carefully, knowing the impact they might have on a weary spirit far away. Historians still argue whether the primary function of these personal letters between Roman soldiers was to maintain individual morale and personal connections, or if they also served a subtle intelligence gathering role, inadvertently providing commanders with insights into troop sentiment and provincial conditions. Was it fellowship or an informal intelligence network? Regardless, you feel the quiet weight of your stylus in your hand, recognizing the profound significance of these written words, bridging the vast distances between fleeting freedom and enduring duty. A lifeline of camaraderie stretched across the vast Roman world. The faint scratching of the stylus on papyrus is the only sound, a silent testament to enduring bonds. With your letters dispatched to distant comrades, you might find yourself drawn to a different kind of experience, one that offers a complete immersion in the vibrancy and diversity of the Roman world, the allure of the city. This exposure to the bustling distractions, myriad opportunities, and sheer spectacle of a major Roman urban center was a crucial mainstream historical fact that offered soldiers on leave a profound contrast to the isolation and routine of garrison life. Imagine stepping into the overwhelming sensory tapestry of a large Roman city. Perhaps Alexandria, Ephesus, or even Rome itself. The sheer scale is breathtaking. You hear the ceaseless din of street vendors, the rumble of carts on cobblestones, the murmur of countless voices speaking a dozen different languages. The air is thick with the smells of exotic spices, fresh bread, unwashed humanity, and distant sewage. You see towering temples, bustling forums, grand theaters, and multi-storied apartment buildings crammed together. It's a dizzying, exhilarating assault on the senses, a stark contrast to the quiet discipline of the frontier. You might feel a thrill of excitement, a sense of boundless possibility, as you navigate the crowded streets. Here's a quirky tidbit. Roman cities were melting pots of cultures, people, and ideas from across the vast empire. A soldier from Gaul might encounter merchants from Syria, philosophers from Greece, and entertainers from Egypt, all within a few city blocks. Imagine stumbling upon a street performer juggling flaming torches while a Syrian merchant loudly haggles over a bolt of silk, all against the backdrop of a grand imperial monument. You might even chuckle at the thought of explaining the intricate complexities of legionary formation to a bewildered street urchin who is more interested in your shining armor. The city offered a dazzling array of distractions. Public baths, as we've discussed, were not just for hygiene, but for socializing. Theaters and amphitheaters promised grand spectacles, plays, gladiatorial games, chariot races. Taverns and papanae, eateries provided food, drink, and companionship. Temples to a myriad of gods offered spiritual solace or simply architectural wonder. For a soldier accustomed to the limited diversions of a castrum, the city was a sensory feast, a chance to indulge every whim. Beyond entertainment, Roman cities were centers of commerce and opportunity. You could find specialized craftsmen, rare goods, and perhaps even learn about new civilian trades or investments. For soldiers nearing the end of their service, a visit to a major city might be a chance to explore future prospects, to lay the groundwork for life after discharge. The sheer anonymity of the city could also be liberating. Away from the watchful eyes of centurions and familiar faces, a soldier could momentarily shed his military identity and simply be one face in a crowd, indulging in pleasures that might be frowned upon back in camp or in his hometown. Historians still argue whether the attraction of Roman cities for soldiers on leave was primarily driven by their recreational offerings, or if it was equally due to the economic opportunities and social mobility they potentially offered. Was it pleasure or pragmatism that drew them to urban centers? Regardless, you feel the vibrant pulse of the city, its endless possibilities and sensory delights, a profound and exhilarating counterpoint to the disciplined world you temporarily escaped, and to which you will soon return. The cacophony of urban life is a symphony of fleeting freedom. After soaking in the vibrant clamor of the Roman city, a different, more practical contemplation often arises, especially for a soldier nearing the end of his long service: finding a civilian trade. This consideration of acquiring skills for life after military service was a crucial mainstream historical fact for many Roman soldiers. Recognizing that their military training, while valuable, didn't always translate directly into viable civilian employment, imagine yourself strolling through a bustling artisan quarter in the city. You see blacksmiths hammering hot metal, weavers working at their looms, potters shaping clay, carpenters cutting wood. Your hands, accustomed to holding a gladius or digging a ditch, might feel a flicker of curiosity about these civilian crafts. You might pause to watch a skilled craftsman, observing the meticulous precision required, so different from the brute force often demanded by military tasks. The future, once a distant abstraction, now feels much closer, bringing with it the urgent question of how you will support yourself once the Legion no longer does. Here's a quirky tidbit: while some military skills, like engineering or surveying, had direct civilian applications, many soldiers' core competencies, fighting, marching, building fortifications, were not easily transferable to peacetime trades. Imagine a veteran trying to explain to a potential employer that his primary skill is expertly stabbing barbarians or digging really straight ditches, and being met with polite confusion. You might even chuckle at the thought of a grizzled legionary attempting to delicately weave a basket, perhaps with more force than finesse. Many soldiers, especially those from humble backgrounds, entered the army with few marketable skills. Upon discharge, they faced the challenge of reintegrating into a civilian economy. While some might return to farming, others sought to learn a trade during their service or use their accumulated savings to buy into an existing business. Leave could be a crucial time for this exploration, for observing different crafts, or even for establishing preliminary contacts. You might engage in conversations with various craftsmen, asking about their work, their apprenticeships, and the demand for their skills. You'd weigh the physical demands of a trade against its potential for steady income. The security of military pay, however meager, would be contrasted with the uncertainty of self-employment or wage labor in the civilian world. This period of contemplation underscores the Roman state's reliance on veterans to become productive members of society upon discharge, preventing them from becoming a social burden. The promise of land grants or cash bonuses was meant to facilitate this transition, but acquiring practical skills was often equally important. Historians still argue whether the Roman army actively encouraged soldiers to learn civilian trades during their service to ease post-discharge transition, or if such skill acquisition was largely an individual initiative driven by personal foresight. Was it military policy or individual ambition? Regardless, you feel the weight of these future considerations, knowing that your time on leave is not just for pleasure, but also for prudent planning. The rhythmic clang of a distant hammer against metal is a subtle reminder of the different kind of labor that awaits you in civilian life, a stark contrast to the life of the soldier you've become. With the practicalities of a future trade now weighing on your mind, you allow yourself to be swept up in the lighter side of civilian life. Local amusements and festivals. This participation in regional celebrations and entertainment was a crucial mainstream historical fact that offered Roman soldiers on leave a vibrant taste of their civilian culture, providing communal joy, colorful spectacle, and a welcome respite from the austere realities of military duty. Imagine the lively atmosphere of a local market square or a village green transformed for a festival. You hear the joyful strains of pipes and lyres, the laughter of children, the excited chatter of crowds. Perhaps there are dancers, acrobats, or even a local storyteller captivating an audience. The air is filled with the scent of roasting meats and sweet pastries, a delightful sensory overload after the plainness of camp life. You might find yourself smiling, a genuine, easy smile that reaches your eyes, as you immerse yourself in the carefree revelry. Here's a quirky tidbit beyond the grand imperial festivals. Local communities often had their own unique celebrations, tied to agricultural cycles, regional deities, or historical events. Imagine stumbling upon a quirky village festival dedicated to the god of grapes, where everyone is stomping wine in large vats, their faces stained purple, or a rustic competition involving feats of strength with farm implements. You might even chuckle at the thought of a solemn legionary trying to participate in a surprisingly intricate folk dance, perhaps with more enthusiasm than grace. These festivals were communal affairs, a chance for the entire community to come together, forget their daily struggles, and celebrate. You would find yourself easily drawn into the crowds, enjoying the spectacle, perhaps even participating in a game or a dance. It's a powerful reminder of the vibrant civilian culture that exists beyond the disciplined world of the Legion, a world full of color, sound, and uninhibited joy. You might witness amateur theatrical performances, reenactments of local myths, or simple athletic contests, though nothing as grand as the professional games in a major city. Food and drink would flow freely, and the social distinctions of daily life might temporarily loosen in the spirit of celebration. It's a chance to simply be a civilian, to forget your rank and your responsibilities, and to share in the collective happiness. For a soldier on leave, these amusements were more than just entertainment. They offered a vital psychological release, a way to decompress from the constant stress and trauma of military life. They provided a connection to the fundamental rhythms of civilian existence, reinforcing what you were fighting to protect. The vibrant energy of the crowd, the shared laughter, and the simple beauty of the festivities offer a profound balm to a weary soul. Historians still argue whether the Roman state actively encouraged local festivals and amusements among its populace, primarily to maintain social order and distract from political grievances, or if these celebrations were purely organic expressions of community identity and religious devotion. Was it control or cultural flourishing? Regardless, you feel the infectious joy of the moment, a powerful reminder of the simple, yet profound, pleasures of civilian life that make the long years of military service bearable. The music and laughter of the festival are a beautiful, fleeting symphony before the quiet discipline returns. As the vibrant music and laughter of the local festivals begin to fade, a familiar pang of sadness inevitably settles in. You are now facing the long goodbyes, a crucial mainstream historical fact that captures the emotional farewells a Roman soldier had to endure before rejoining his unit. A poignant reminder of the separations inherent in military life and the uncertainty of future reunions. Imagine the last meal with your family, perhaps quieter than the first, laden with unspoken emotions. Your mother's eyes might be a little red-rimmed, your father's gaze a little more distant. Your children, perhaps now more accustomed to your presence, cling to your leg, their small faces mirroring your own internal conflict. Each hug, each touch, feels weighted with the knowledge that it might be the last for a very long time, or even forever. You might find yourself lingering over a cup of wine, trying to prolong these precious final moments, wishing time would simply stop. Here's a quirky tidbit: families would often pack special provisions for the soldier's journey back to camp. A favorite homemade bread, a piece of cheese, or a small amulet for good luck. Imagine your mother pressing a carefully wrapped parcel into your hands, her eyes brimming with unshed tears, a silent prayer for your safe return. You might even find yourself swallowing hard, touched by the simple, heartfelt gesture, a tangible reminder of the love you're leaving behind. The farewells would be practical as well as emotional. You'd review any instructions your family had for managing affairs in your absence, check on the status of your property, and ensure they had enough provisions. You'd offer final words of advice to your children, perhaps a stern warning about good behavior or a tender promise of your return. These mundane details, imbued with the profound weight of separation, make the parting even more poignant. The journey back to the Legion loomed large, a symbol of the inevitable return to duty, discipline, and danger, the comfort of civilian life, the softness of a family bed, the freedom to choose your own pace. All of it was about to be stripped away, replaced by the rigid demands of military service. The emotional transition from relaxed civilian to hardened soldier began even before you left the threshold of your home. You try to appear strong, stoic, a proper Roman soldier, but inside a knot of sorrow tightens. The love of your family is a powerful anchor, and tearing yourself away feels like severing a part of your soul. You walk away, trying not to look back. The image of their faces etched in your mind, a precious memory to sustain you through the long months, or years, ahead. Historians still argue whether the repeated, painful goodbyes experienced by Roman soldiers and their families led to a greater emotional resilience over time, or if they perpetuated a constant underlying grief and a sense of impermanence in familial bonds. Did it harden them or deepen their capacity for sorrow? Regardless, you feel the profound ache of these long goodbyes, a universal human experience amplified by the vast distances and dangers of the Roman world, a poignant echo of the sacrifices made in the name of empire and duty. The silence after their fading farewells is almost deafening. With the lingering ache of farewells in your heart, your focus now shifts, slowly but surely, from the comforts of home to the demands of the road. You are now beginning on marching back to duty. See, a crucial mainstream historical fact that encapsulates the physical and mental preparation required for a Roman soldier to transition from the relaxed pace of civilian life back to the rigorous discipline and constant vigilance of military service. Imagine the first few steps away from your village. Your civilian clothes, once so liberating, now feel a little less comfortable, a little less right. Your pack, filled with supplies and perhaps a few last-minute gifts, settles heavily on your shoulders. The rhythm of your stride, initially a leisurely walk, gradually lengthens, becoming more purposeful, more disciplined. You feel your muscles, softened by rest and good food, beginning to remember the long miles. It's like a gradual retuning of an instrument, preparing for a demanding performance. Here's a quirky tidbit. Roman soldiers were legendary for their marching prowess, often covering 20-25 miles, 30-40 kilometers a day with full kit. This remarkable endurance wasn't just physical, it was a deeply ingrained mental discipline. Imagine your civilian friends complaining about a walk to the next village, while you, almost unconsciously, could cover that distance before breakfast. You might even find yourself silently judging the inefficient gait of other travelers, a subtle sign of your military conditioning. The journey back might take weeks or even months. Depending on your legion's station, you'd retrace familiar roads, perhaps meeting other soldiers returning from their own leaves, sharing brief nods of recognition and unspoken understanding. The conversations would slowly shift from civilian gossip to camp rumors, tactical discussions, and the anticipation of what awaits your unit. The emotional transition from family man back to hardened legionary happens with every mile covered. You'd begin to mentally prepare for the demands ahead, the rigid schedules, the relentless drills, the potential for combat. You'd review your kit, ensure your weapons are sharp, and your armor in good repair. The soft edges of civilian life begin to harden, replaced by the familiar mental toughness required for survival on the frontier. The sounds of the road, the creak of carts, the occasional shouts of travelers begin to morph into the imagined clamor of the marching column. This period of transition is essential. It allows you to shed the softer, civilian skin and redon the mental armor of a soldier. It's a psychological decompression in reverse, preparing you for the demands of the disciplined, dangerous life that awaits. The longing for home slowly transforms into a renewed sense of duty and purpose. Historians still argue whether the Roman army's rigorous marching standards were primarily a logistical necessity for rapid deployment, or if they also served as a psychological tool to instill discipline, endurance, and a collective identity among soldiers. Was it efficiency or indoctrination regardless? You feel the familiar rhythm of the march beneath your feet, a steady yet relentless beat that carries you away from fleeting freedom and back towards the unyielding embrace of the legion. Each step is a conscious decision to return, a re-engagement with your sworn duty, leaving the echoes of home fading behind you. The distant sound of your own footsteps becomes a sole companion on your journey back to the front. As the miles fall behind you and the familiar contours of the military landscape emerge, you experience the intricate process of reintegration into camp life. This adjustment to the rigid, regimented routine of the Legion, once more, is a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the significant psychological and physical recalibration a Roman soldier underwent, shedding the freedoms of leave to fully embrace his identity as a disciplined warrior. Imagine the castrum appearing on the horizon, the precise lines of its ramparts, the methodical layout of its tents or barracks. You hear the distant sounds of drill, the barked commands, the rhythmic clang of the smithy. As you pass through the main gate, a familiar sentry gives a nod of recognition, and you feel the subtle but unmistakable shift in atmosphere. The world outside the walls, with its gentle rhythms and personal choices, instantly recedes, replaced by the omnipresent order of the Legion. You might instinctively square your shoulders, your posture aligning with the disciplined aura of the camp. Here's a quirky tidbit upon returning. Soldiers would often undergo a brief, informal inspection of their gear and personal appearance. a quick check to ensure they hadn't become too soft or civilian during their time away. Imagine your centurion giving you a stern, appraising look, perhaps even sniffing for any lingering scent of civilian perfume or a particularly strong wine. You might even find yourself subtly trying to look more grim and soldier-like, just to impress him. The first days back are a flurry of reacclimatization. You report to your centurion, present your papers, and return to your contubernum, your tent group or barracks room. Your personal space, once a full civilian home, shrinks to a tiny corner shared with 7 other men. The sounds are constant, the chatter of your comrades, the clatter of arms, the shouts from the drill ground. The familiar smells of sweat, leather, and wood smoke quickly replace the more varied aromas of civilian life. The transition from individual autonomy to collective discipline is swift and absolute. Your daily schedule is no longer your own. It's dictated by bugle calls, duty rosters, and the ceaseless demands of training and maintenance. You pick up your pilum, don your armor, and fall into formation, your body remembering the movements, even if your mind still yearns for civilian ease. The rough camaraderie of your contubernum reestablishes itself instantly, a powerful bond forged in shared hardship, utterly distinct from civilian friendships. You begin to speak in the clipped, direct language of the Legion again, shedding the polite circumlocutions of civilian conversation. Your attention to detail, your vigilance, your readiness for command, all of these military instincts, which subtly intruded on your leave, now snap back into full focus. You are no longer just Marcus or Lucius, you are a legionary, a vital part of the Empire's fighting machine. Historians still argue whether the Roman army's rigorous system of reintegration was primarily designed to quickly restore unit cohesion and combat readiness, or if it also served a psychological purpose, ensuring that soldiers shed civilian identities that might threaten loyalty or discipline. Was it about efficiency or identity regardless? You feel the familiar embrace of military order, the weight of your armor, and the reassuring presence of your comrades, knowing that you are fully, irrevocably, a soldier once more. The distant bugle call now sounds like a welcome, if stern, greeting, fully reintegrated into the Legion's embrace. One of the first and most enjoyable rituals is the casual exchange of experiences. You are now sharing leave stories, a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the informal way Roman soldiers swapped tales of their time away, bonding over shared experiences of temporary freedom and offering a vital release from the constant pressures of military life. Imagine sitting around a flickering campfire in the contubernum area after a long day's drill, or perhaps in the dim light of the barracks. The air is filled with the murmur of voices, the scent of wood smoke, and the occasional burst of laughter. You and your comrades, newly returned from leave or still awaiting their turn, lean in, eager for news, for entertainment, for a taste of the civilian world you've just left or desperately crave. You might even find yourself exaggerating a detail or two, just to make your story more captivating, basking in the attention of your fellow legionaries. Here's a quirky tidbit: soldiers often had their own specific leave stories that became legendary within their unit. The one about the beautiful barmaid, the one about the ridiculously cheap wine, or the one about the narrow escape from a civilian brawl. Imagine a new recruit listening wide-eyed to a grizzled veteran recount a tale of a particularly wild night in Alexandria, perhaps with a knowing wink from another, older soldier who remembers the truth of the story. You might even chuckle at the thought of a soldier recounting a perfectly mundane journey, trying to make it sound like a perilous adventure. You'd share details about your journey home, the state of the roads, any interesting characters you met. You'd describe the joy of family reunions, the taste of home-cooked meals, and the simple comforts of a soft bed. For those still counting the days until their own leave, these stories were precious glimpses into a desired future, a vital piece of mental sustenance. In turn, you'd listen to the stories of those who had been on leave before you, or those who had stayed in camp. You'd catch up on any internal news, new assignments, promotions, or the latest eccentricities of the officers. This exchange reinforces the bonds of camaraderie, reminding you that despite your individual experiences on leave, you are all part of the same shared military existence. The stories serve as a powerful form of group therapy. They allow soldiers to process their brief taste of freedom, to compare notes, and to collectively decompress. They also reinforce the values of the Legion, the importance of enduring hardship, the privilege of leave, and the shared identity that binds them all. The laughter and nods of understanding are a subtle balm for the weary soul. Historians still argue whether the sharing of leave stories primarily served as a form of entertainment and morale boosting within the Legion, or if it also acted as a subtle mechanism for information exchange and maintaining unit cohesion across dispersed deployments. Was it escapism or operational awareness regardless? You feel the familiar comfort of shared storytelling, the warmth of camaraderie around the fire, knowing that these stories, however embellished, are a vital part of what makes the arduous life of a Roman soldier bearable. The murmur of voices sharing tales of fleeting freedom is a soothing lullaby after the long journey back. With the laughter from shared leave stories still echoing in the barracks, your mind, almost unconsciously, begins its next cycle of hopeful anticipation. You're dreaming of next leave, a crucial mainstream historical fact that highlights the soldier's constant, quiet yearning for future respite from duty, a powerful psychological coping mechanism that helps sustain morale through the arduous, often endless, years of Roman military service. Imagine lying on your hard cot in the barracks, the sounds of your comrades' breathing and the distant clang of a sentry's armor filling the night. You close your eyes, and your thoughts drift from the immediate realities of drill and discipline to a future vision, the warmth of your family's home, the taste of home-cooked food, the laughter of friends, the quiet intimacy of a loved one's embrace. It's a mental escape, a flickering ember of hope that keeps the weariness at bay. You might even find yourself tracing imaginary lines on the rough blanket, planning an even better way to spend those precious weeks. Here's a quirky tidbit: soldiers would often calculate exactly how long it would be until their next potential leave, or until their discharge. They might mark off days on a hidden tablet or engage in long, speculative conversations with comrades about what they would do with their pay and time. Imagine two grizzled legionaries whispering conspiratorially about a fantasy fishing trip in Gaul, or a plan to finally open that tavern in Rome, years before either of them actually had the chance. You might even chuckle at the thought of grown men meticulously counting days like impatient children awaiting a festival. This dreaming wasn't just idle fantasy. It was a vital psychological tool. The anticipation of future leave provided a tangible goal, a light at the end of the long, arduous tunnel of military duty. It offered a necessary emotional pressure release, allowing the soldier to endure the monotonous grind, the harsh discipline, and the ever-present danger. Without such a prospect, morale would undoubtedly plummet. Your dreams might be specific: finally building that small extension on your family home, visiting a famous temple you heard about on campaign, or simply having uninterrupted days of sleep. These personal aspirations were powerful motivators, keeping you focused during grueling marches and terrifying skirmishes. The camaraderie in these shared dreams was also significant. You'd listen to your comrades' aspirations, offering advice or sharing your own hopes. It created a collective sense of future, a shared longing that reinforced their bonds, knowing that they were all enduring the present for the promise of a future, however distant. Historians still argue whether the practice of granting periodic leaves, however infrequent, was primarily a pragmatic strategy by the Roman army to prevent mutiny and maintain long-term soldier retention, or if it genuinely reflected a concern for the psychological well-being of their troops. Was it manipulation or welfare regardless? You feel the gentle pull of these future dreams, a comforting whisper in the night that reminds you there is always something to look forward to. Even in the most demanding of lives, the image of a sunny, peaceful day back home is a powerful lullaby, lulling you towards the promise of another fleeting freedom. As the dreams of future leave settle into the quiet corners of your mind, you arrive at the profound, cyclical truth of a Roman soldier's existence. The endless cycle of service. This reflection on the repetitive nature of a soldier's life, oscillating between the relentless demands of duty and the fleeting moments of freedom, is a crucial mainstream historical fact that defined the identity and fate of countless men who served the Roman Empire. Imagine the dawn breaking over the castrum once more. The bugle sounds, sharp and insistent. You rise, don your armor, and fall into formation, just as you have countless times before, and just as you will countless times again. The drill, the march, the guard duty, the meals, it all repeats with unwavering regularity. The extraordinary moments of battle or the exotic experiences of travel become mere punctuation marks in a vast, repetitive sentence of service. You might feel a sigh escape, a quiet acceptance of this enduring rhythm. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Roman soldiers, after decades of this cycle, found it incredibly difficult to fully adapt to civilian life upon discharge, missing the structure and camaraderie of the legion. Imagine a veteran, years after leaving service, still rising at dawn, meticulously cleaning his imaginary armor, and barking orders at his bewildered chickens. You might even chuckle at the thought of a former centurion trying to organize a civilian banquet with military precision. Much to the exasperation of his family, your life is a series of transitions from civilian to recruit, from raw recruit to seasoned legionary, from duty to leave, and back again to duty. Each cycle reinforces your identity as a soldier, carving deeper grooves into your psyche. The hardships are constant, but so is the resilience, the camaraderie, and the unwavering sense of purpose in serving the greatest empire the world has known. The empire itself, in its vastness and perpetuity, mirrors this cycle. Conquests are made, frontiers are secured, but new threats always emerge, demanding constant vigilance and endless service. You are a small, yet vital cog in this immense, self-perpetuating machine. Your personal life woven into its grand tapestry, your dreams of future leave, your memories of past freedoms, these are the fuel that sustains you through the long stretches of duty. They are not merely escapes. They are necessary components of the cycle, allowing for renewal before the inevitable return to the grind. It's a testament to the human capacity to find solace and purpose within even the most demanding and repetitive existences. Historians still argue whether the long-term, cyclical nature of Roman military service primarily fostered unwavering loyalty to the empire and its institutions, or if it also led to widespread disillusionment and a yearning for a life beyond the army. Was it a foundation of strength or a source of silent despair? Regardless, you feel the profound rhythm of your life, the ebb and flow between duty and fleeting freedom, understanding that this endless cycle of service is not just your personal fate, but the very heartbeat of the Roman Empire itself. The distant bugle call fades into the quiet certainty of another day, another march, another turn of the ceaseless wheel of service. As the final echoes of our journey gently fade, imagine the quiet stillness of the Roman night, stars twinkling like distant campfires over the vast expanse of the empire. The clang of armor, the shouts of centurions, the laughter of comrades, they all recede into the gentle hum of history. Your mind, filled with images of dusty roads, bustling taverns, family reunions, and the relentless discipline of the legion, is ready to rest. Let the quiet rhythm of the ancient world lull you into a deep, peaceful sleep. You are safe, enveloped by the stillness of the past. Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams.